All right, we're going to call this Finance Committee meeting to order. Present are council members Cost, Bub, Blake, Marmee, and Labuda sitting in for Frazier. First item on the agenda is a request for appropriation amount of $34,400.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're asking to take this out of budget stabilization. This is for North Street Park. The only reason we want to take it out of budget stabilization is it allows us to go ahead and order the equipment. When we get our 2019 release of funds from block grant, the budget stabilization money will be paid back. So it just allows us to go ahead and order the equipment and get a PO together to order the equipment.
Okay. Motion.
Second.
A motion by Bob, second by Labuda. Any questions and or discussion? Yes, ma'am.
About your North Street Park project, is it getting basketball nets and things like that back?
Is it getting basketball? I'd have to look at the plan. It's getting a new shelter house. It's getting new equipment.
I never had a shelter house.
Well, it's getting a shelter house.
Sweet.
So it's going to be a nice pickup.
Okay, I'd like to know more about that. I've worked on that park before.
We'll get you a copy of the plan.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Yes.
Just want to reinforce, it does need to be expedited through the Finance Committee.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah. I guess there was I had a couple questions, and just I did contact Steve Johnson. He said he didn't understand why we couldn't have just paid for it out of the grants, because I mean, taxes, we don't actually have the money, we're projecting it, and he didn't understand why we couldn't pay for it under like a budget, your budget, and then when the money comes back, it just kind of, it's anticipated funds.
It's all anticipated funds, you're right.
And then the other thing was, it's coming under finance, and actually it's truly a capital improvement. So
Yeah,
it was very confusing.
When Barbara and I called, we called Steve to ask him how he'd like it handled. This is the direction he gave us originally, so he could have changed his
He
thoughts.
was not aware, he was on vacation, was not aware of the exact facts of what was all going on.
Yeah, that's, Barbara also got with Jackie. And Doug, probably to get to the core of your question, for us, the Department of Development, we can only keep a certain level of funds on hand. If we exceed that level, then we run into what's called a timeliness issue, and they could actually revoke some of our funds. So we're trying to be proactive in getting the money, getting the PO done so we can get the equipment ordered, because we haven't been getting our money till almost September. If we were to wait till September and then put an order in for the equipment, by the time it came in, then trying to find a crew that can install it, we're pushing the end of the year. We're definitely getting out of the weather, you know, to install the equipment.
Okay, see, Steve was under the impression that it had to be paid for, and then we get reimbursed.
Exactly. So we want to be able to do a PO,
Why can't
which allows us to place the order, and then it has to be paid for. So then the equipment will be here ready to go this fall, and then so we can get it done. And we're hiring out the labor from the company that we're getting the equipment from, because they have that expertise to install all that equipment. And so really it's a timing issue as much as anything.
Right, but what I'm saying is you have anticipated funds in your budget for that grant.
We do, which allows us to repay this back.
Right, so therefore, we can have a PO based on anticipated funds.
The Department of Development cannot have a PO ahead of the release of funds, or we will not be able to use our funds for it. We have to get our funds first before we do any purchase orders and spend any money. And that's really why we're here today, to get ahead of this.
So on like this one with the reimbursement, we have to pay for it all the time, 100% of the time?
We cannot initiate the transaction until we have the release of funds for that year's spending. So 2019 CDBG funds probably won't see a release till earliest maybe August. More than likely middle of September is when we've been seeing it. If we initiate a transaction with a purchase order, then we, ahead of the funds, then we cannot use our CDBG funds for that purchase.
Isn't that actually what we are doing?
No, we're moving money from the
No,
budget
but
stabilization.
We are initiating a purchase prior to you having the funds.
But not-
You're stating, so all we're doing is we're hiding the fact that we're purchasing it ahead of time, or what are
No,
we?
we're not hiding the fact,
If
we're
there-
trying,
No, but if the rule says we're not allowed to, then why are we?
like I explained, we're an entitlement city. As far as HUD goes, we are on their January 1st. First of the year is when
Right.
we get supposed to get our funds. We don't see those funds till almost September,
Right.
which is getting close to the end of the construction season. Okay? Why we get it that late, I don't know. But we do. That's the fact of the matter. And so to get this project done by the end of the year and in the season that we can do the work, construction season, this is about our only alternative that's available to us.
Okay. Here's
Using
some questions. I
some
want-
city funds that we'll just simply reimburse when we get our CDBG release of funds.
Here's questions I want answered prior to us going, not this evening, but voting on it, okay?
Okay.
Your statement saying that the Department of Development is not allowed to spend funds prior to us having the funds available. I want to know the difference between that and us, we're purchasing it prior to you having the funds available. So why is the difference okay? That's one that I want
Okay.
answered, okay? The other one, again, I go back to Steve Johnson says that, any department, as long as they have anticipated revenue in their budget, you're allowed to have POs for that anticipated revenue. Now, you're saying you're not because of the rules of the grants.
Right.
Well, here's the thing. We're getting around the rules of the grant. I don't want to do something that is breaking the rules. Does that make sense?
And we're also trying to get ourselves out of position of what they call timeliness at HUD,
Right.
where you got to have so many of these funds out the door by the end of the year. It's tough to get the funds out the door when you don't get them till September 15th and you
Right.
have the 31st of December, and they're temperature and weather related in order to do the projects.
Right.
So we're trying to do the right thing so we can get the project done
Exactly.
and also stay within the guidelines of CDBG and HUD, meaning don't go out and spend these before you have your release from us.
But
That's
we
all
are.
Well, no, the city is. We're going to reimburse the city.
Okay, but you're telling me it's not a guarantee that we're going to get this $34,000 back.
It is a guarantee because we've already got our allocation of funds.
Exactly.
We are just waiting for the release of funds,
Okay.
which puts it into our account. And we cannot spend it. We can't write a purchase order against it until they put it into our account.
And
But it has already been approved.
That's what I want to make sure of, but
Yes.
we are. The city is doing a purchase order for that equipment, and that's what I want clarified. If it's against the rules, then we should not go forward with it. And so that's
Okay.
all I'm saying.
We wouldn't be doing it if it was against the rules, but if you want some sort of,
Well,
you want
you're
something
saying
from
you
HUD?
You can't because that's the rules.
We won't be. The city will be fronting it, just like they front all the rest of our grants that are reimbursement grants. Everything we do upstairs. We spend it, we pay for it, the city fronts it, and then we reimburse it from the grant money. That's how we do everything else.
But that's in your budget, right?
Yes, yes it is.
And this was not in your budget.
I'm sorry?
CDBG funds were not in your budget.
The CDBG is our budget for Department of Development.
Yeah, that's what Steve was saying, that he doesn't understand why you can't do a purchase order even though you haven't received the funds.
I'd have to get with Steve and explain
Right.
it to him, I guess.
Okay.
But I can tell you, Barbara's been doing this for, 25 years? She knows CDBG better than
Okay.
most people. And guarantee it's not something that's outside of the realm as far as doing something right or wrong. We would not be doing it if it wasn't.
No, I just want to
wasn't
make sure
correct.
that I'm doing everything to make sure that we are not voting on something that is going around
No.
around something. Okay.
No.
Okay.
No, what we're trying to do is be expeditious with our funds, get the project done. Mark, I'm looking at you, obviously, because it's right in your backyard. And that's the only way we know how to do this. It's really difficult if you've ever done any work with contractors. You got to have materials to match up with the labor. And we're just trying to get the materials there so when the labor's ready, we're ready to go.
That's all understood. You were clear on that.
Okay.
Completely.
If I may.
Yes.
So this is to purchase the equipment, right? Because there's a 6 to 8 week lag time in getting the equipment in. When the CDBG funds, those are going to be used exclusively for the installation and the reimbursement, and it's projected in the fall. And so I think to Doug's point is he wants to make sure that the unallocated, unappropriated balance is the appropriate budgetary resource to use, and if there is a better mechanism to use, whether it's the CDBG account or any other account, we just want to make sure that Steve Johnson's on board. And so at the end of the day, we want to get this completed by the end of this month. So before next council, we might want to have an update in the next finance meeting to say, this is the right account, have Steve here, make sure everybody's on board.
Okay.
But to your point of timeliness and execution with the construction window, but from the HHCA, the city perspective, we want to make sure that we get this project done this year because that's kind of what the community is looking for. So there's been a lot of work that's been going on for the last year for this, and I appreciate Barbara's work and her reaching out to me as well and giving us an update. But if it's okay with everybody, my recommendation is to move it forward, come back to the next finance committee, make sure everything's on board, and take it from there. And I don't know what your thoughts on that, Doug.
No, I need an answer by the end of the week. I can't wait till the Monday of to have responses and updates. I need it before the end of the week.
Okay. And again, just for clarity, we started with Steve. I guess Steve was out of town. Steve said, hey, go talk to Jackie, and she will give you the best account to use in this situation for what you're trying to accomplish.
Right.
And that's where she suggested the Budget Stabilization Fund, knowing that we'll be able to pay that back in full just as soon as we get our release of funds, just like we do for everything else upstairs.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
Thanks.
So I have a motion on the table and a second. Any further discussion? Yes.
Now that Councilman Frazier's joined us, could you, Director Rhodes mentioned a shelter house. Do you know what else is going to be going on at the park?
If I may. And so there's brand new equipment that's going in. So June of last year, a tree took down all the equipment. And so there's basically been a swing set there, and there's been no playground equipment there for about a year. And so this is going to be replacing that equipment with new equipment from a contractor. So there's going to be like a teeter-totter, a slide. There's going to be some jungle gym equipment as well, and just general play activity for the age range of 5 through 12. And then they have some kind of new and unique equipment that's going to be different from our other parks to give everybody in the community something a little bit different to play on. And so the community garden will stay there. The HHCA is also going to be putting shrubs in and redoing. We've already done 2 retaining walls there. We're probably going to expand that as well over the next year, and ultimately the shelter house and a sidewalk will also be added there to allow ADA access to everything as well. So it should be a lot of marked improvements for a pretty neglected park over the last year.
Can that be forwarded to the committee, what all those items are?
Yep. It's not a problem.
Thank you.
Any further questions or discussion? Yes, ma'am.
So, do I need to
No.
vote there? Okay. Again, I get the impression that there will be no basketball on courts, and have you considered doing something a little bit more along the lines of Wildwood Park, where the community got involved?
Ma'am, I guess this is not a discussion about what's going into that project or anything. This is just for the funding purposes. If Director Mauder would be someone that you should talk to as far as the project itself and information or any input. Same with Councilman Frazier. If you want to get with him, he's a part of that whole community, and he gets very involved in that park and the things that happen. So that'd probably be a better venue for you to kind of discuss that. Okay?
How do I do that?
Just talk to him, like after this meeting or in between meetings.
Okay.
Very good. All right. Seeing nothing further, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. That motion passes 5-0. So that was to move it from the budget stabilization. I'd entertain a motion for the same $34,400 to go into the general fund for that specific purpose. Okay, so, hold on. Councilman Frazier now is sitting in, back in his seat, so Mr. Labutus will not be voting, Councilman Frazier will. So, I have a motion by Frazier, a second by Bub. Any further questions or discussion on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. That motion passes 5-0. Next item on the agenda is a request for appropriation amount of $30,000.
This is for, as part of our anaerobic digester project, we need to truck some seed biosolids from the city of Columbus over to us to get our digester started up, hopefully later on this month. And so this is to pay for the trucking of that material from Jackson Pike wastewater plant in Columbus to our plant. So,
Motion. Second.
I have a motion by Bub, second by Frazier. Any questions and or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. That motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Roger. Next item on the agenda is a request for appropriation in the amount of $35,200 for termination pay for Rose Peck.
Mr. Chair, I'll speak to that. Rose is retiring, and these are payouts she's due.
Motion. Second.
Motion by Bub, second by Frazier. Any questions and or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Thank you. That motion passes 5-0. And the next one is another termination payout in the amount of $28,800.
Yes, that was for Tim Kelly. He retired also.
Motion. Second.
Motion by Bub, second by Cost. Any questions and or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. That motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is a request for appropriation in the amount of $57,715.
Good evening.
And it's not for a SRAM unit.
No, it's not. So this is part of our Justice Reinvestment and Incentive Grant. This is the actual incentive part. So the state of Ohio, specifically Department of Corrections, rewards grant recipients who perform well in their grant cycles. So we performed well, so this is our reward. We would like to appropriate that money so we can spend some of it.
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Frazier, second by Bub. Any questions and or discussion? What's your plan with it?
Well, they've actually reduced it considerably from the last two grant cycles. So we typically use this for training, we use it for programming, we've used it for equipment. There's a code section that regulates the spending of this. It has to be a community corrections program. So probation and our specialized docket is typically what we're spending this money for. Yes.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Any other questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. That motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
And with that, this Finance Committee meeting stands adjourned. Next up is capital improvements.
Okay, I'd like to call this meeting of the Capital Improvements Committee to order. Those present are myself, Lang, Hall, Rath, Labutus, and Fennell. Just one item on the agenda today, Resolution 1953. Appropriation in the amount of $29,000 for spot weld general building maintenance. Director Rhodes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. About this time each year, I come before this committee, and I ask to transfer the remaining capital improvement dollars into the building grounds maintenance account. The reason I do that is that way it's already appropriated. I have no intended use for these dollars at this point, and if I don't use them, they just roll back into the general fund at the end of the year. But I like to have them available in case a air conditioner goes out, in case I get a roof leak or something like that. So it's more backup money, and I'm just wanting to have it appropriated. And again, if I don't spend it, it just rolls back to the general fund.
Any questions from the committee? Audience? I'll entertain a motion. Motion by Labutus, second by Rath. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of sending this on to full council signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
That passes 5-0. This committee stands adjourned. Full council will convene at 7 o'clock.